The purpose of the event is for inspiration, for exploring possibilities, celebrating great work, but through the lens of what's next. We're not looking backwards.
Welcome back to Event Explorer. I'm your host, Daniel Roth, and this is the podcast where we uncover the stories behind the world's most exciting events and meet the creative minds that bring them to life. Today, we're diving into On Air Fest, a festival that explores the art of sound and storytelling in a unique and inspiring live event. We spend a lot of time listening to podcasts alone, but what happens when we bring these voices together? When we create a space for journalists, artists, and musicians in front of a live audience to connect, collaborate, and push their medium forward? Well, since 2016, that's exactly what On Air Fest has been doing. And who better to talk to about this than Scott Newman, the founder and a creative force who has shaped the way brands and artists tell their stories for years. As the founder of Work by Work, Scott has worked with TED, The New Yorker, Netflix, and many more, helping define the voice and visual identity of some of the biggest names in media. He has grown On Air Fest into a must-attend gathering for the most innovative voices in sound, featuring live conversations, performances, and experiences with guests like Malcolm Gladwell, Laurie Anderson, and the teams behind podcasts like Serial, Shiro's, Broken Record, On Being, and more. But before we jump in, don't forget, follow Event Explorer on your favorite podcast platform, share this episode with a friend, and leave us a review. It helps us bring more incredible events and guests to you. All right, let's get over to Brooklyn and hear all about On Air Fest. Welcome back to Event Explorer. Today we are diving into the intersection of sound, storytelling, and creative innovation with a guest who's been shaping the audio landscape in profound ways for years. Joining us is Scott Newman, the founder and director of On Air Fest, the premier festival that brings together visionaries from music, broadcast radio and television, film, and podcasting to explore the power of sound. As On Air Fest gears up for its biggest year yet, expanding across Brooklyn with a lineup that includes Anderson Cooper, Seth Meyers, Penn Badgley, Audie Cornish, and tons more, Scott is here to give us an inside look at how the festival has evolved, what's next for the audio industry, and how creativity continues to push the boundaries of storytelling. Scott, thank you for making time for us today. Looking forward to diving into your story.
Thank you, Daniel. So happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, you've built this career that's really at the intersection of storytelling, sound, creative innovation. You are partnering with tons of great brands, Sonos, Netflix, MoMA. But before all that, this is something that you've built, right? And I'm sure there's a huge network and there's a passion behind it. Where did this journey begin for you? And particularly that leading up to On Air Fest and this interest in audio.
I mean, I have always been working in storytelling and media, since coming out of school. And, I started as a radio producer. I worked in newsrooms. I worked at creative agencies. And I've been a bit of a kind of renaissance man in terms of making sure that I am up on all of the evolving creative mediums and how to use them. And, I taught myself photography. I taught myself filmmaking. I taught myself ideas. And I think maybe in my late 20s, I realized I can pitch ideas. I can meet people and be at work and be in projects. And I was working at CBS at the time, and I was working in the broadcast center on 57th Street. And Dan Rather's office was up the, around the corner, and 60 Minutes was up the hall, and 48 Hours. And I realized you can pitch ideas. You can run around the building introducing yourself to people. And that's what I've been doing for over 20 years. And honestly, like On Air Fest and my agency, Work by Work right now, it's all born from the idea that like things are happening and brands, partners, consumers, TV viewers, audio listeners, they want to be a part of it. And it's all about a POV. So if you can kind of get your POV out there, you can get projects off the ground. On Air Fest started in 2016. I had been working with a number of hotels in New York making content for hotel rooms, and we had a city guide project that we did, and we did films and also print collateral, and we helped provide content to White Hotel in Williamsburg when they opened in 2011. And I've been very friendly with the owners there. Cut to 2015, we had been doing a lot of work in the audio space, branding work, strategy work with Spotify and NPR, and also Stitcher at that time. And there was this sense that there was something happening in podcasting that felt like more than just your everyday kind of media
Mhm.
medium. And the ownership group said to us, "Is podcasting like pirate radio? And should we have a pirate radio station at the hotel?" And of course, I mean, even looking at you,
That
Daniel,
sounds
and
cool.
your
Yeah.
space, it's like you're a pirate radio station,
Sure, sure.
broadcasting from wherever you are, talking to these amazing, event producers, thinkers, people.
My undisclosed location, yeah.
Your undisclosed location, exactly, in Hawaii or something.
Uh-huh. Sure, yeah.
Um, and I thought, wow, maybe it does have a little bit of that,
Mhm,
and there are public radio producers who are coming around to the other side of the mic and telling stories and reporting on things, not necessarily being, having a background as a host
mhm,
or an anchor. You have poets taking to the microphone, other kinds of storytellers, musicians who are switching to storytelling versus only making music. And so we decided to do kind of like a radio party at the hotel in 2016. And we brought we brought Vice in, who had never done a live podcast. They're like, "We have like 3 live podcasts we could bring, and we could do live talks." And then we got musicians to come in, and we got artists to come and talk about their process, and it was called Work by Work on Air. And Work by Work's the name of our creative agency,
mhm.
and it was called On Air. But the event was like packed house. We had 4 days of talks and, different things happening. It was very clear that this was bigger than just our agency, Work by Work, and we called it On Air Fest, and that debuted in 2018.
Oh, okay, so that was the advancement. I imagine some of the success, this pirate radio aspect of this,
Yeah.
everyone's got their niche, and especially it's almost like, like indie rock or something or indie music that you find someone that has a voice that you feel is like speaking directly to you. So these I'm sure that the fans were just like super passionate to see these people that they'd only heard as, voices in their ears in person. Was that a big draw, do you think?
I when we started, we decided very early on, we're gonna treat people like they're musicians performing at a festival. And whether they were, kinda a known name audio host from NPR or a guest there to talk about indie comics, we were gonna wash their headshot in a beautiful design, make it big on the website, and, really talk about it like performing. And that first year we had, I don't know, 75, 80, 100 people doing different things. And I think there was this sense like, wow, audio as star kind of makes a little bit of sense. And you don't really know what they look like, but you know their voices. And more importantly, you get the ideas, you know? You when you
Sure.
platform people, they perform, they open up, they bring ideas, and it becomes really interesting, in that way.
That, it's a unique, format for a festival that people are creating on site to then use later as well, right? This is,
Yeah.
yeah, recorded live at On Air Festival and a lot of music festivals you attend, and that's the set. You could watch somebody's phone video on YouTube, but, this isn't a meant for broadcast kind of thing. What kind of how do you ensure that they're gonna get and I'm sure you do, and you make a bunch of episodes. I mean, the audience must kinda come in expecting to listen or, you're not screaming out at the there's laughter and but you're not like a raving at the rail, kind of music festival thing. So it must be a kind of different crowd or a different vibe. What's the vibe like at On Air Fest now, with that setup?
It's a very creative audience too. And,
Yeah.
I think there's this sense of like, I could be on stage doing my thing, or I could be in the audience. And it's like, a lot of people come and they do their show, or they're part of some kind of performance or talk, and then they're there all week. So it's a very maker, creative kind of type of audience. And we do a lot of different things. Like, yeah, people do come and record and tape and blast out, but we also do like, performances and panels and, different kinds of networking events that are a little more, not necessarily made for broadcast, like
Okay.
made for the room. So I think there's a little bit of a sense of like premium and exclusive, and like I'm at an intimate event and it's special to be here, but also this outsized presence in the form of all the content that goes out afterwards. The way the festival, the brand has grown has been really interesting. We have a deep partnership with White Hotel in Williamsburg. They're like the original hotel that helped kind of bring in the cultural like undercurrent that now is,
Mhm.
Cool Kid Brooklyn.
Right.
And we've done the fest there now 8 years, and they have 70 rooms and a number of public spaces. There's a main hall with this gorgeous mahogany bar that runs the whole width of the room, giant high ceilings. It's an industrial chic, 120-year-old kind of old factory building that has been, remodeled. There's two restaurants, two award-winning restaurants, one of which overlooks the Manhattan skyline from the 6th floor on the East River. There are lofts in the 7th floor that are like bigger rooms, and there's a penthouse on the 8th floor, and we activate all of those spaces. The penthouse is a video podcast penthouse. There's a little stage, there's an intimate audience, there's cameras and audio, and we curate it,
Mhm.
and they're partners, and it's really magical because in the morning, you're overlooking the city and the skyline views, and then the sun starts to set, and when you have like different shows on the hour, it really can take on different moods. And then
Mhm.
in the cellar level of the hotel, there's a cinema. So it's like it was
Screening
like
room or
a screening room, and it has its own speakeasy. So, you get to do that, programming that lends itself to deep, dark rooms and has a big screen, and you have drinks, and there's a private dining room that we use as like a talent lounge. And
Okay.
at first we didn't take over the whole hotel, but as the event grew and also as the space grew, and we do it in the winter. So, like, there's this sense of, like, it's a little bit of a slower time for the hotel and also in the industry. There aren't,
Mhm.
South by is a couple weeks after us, and things kinda ramp up, and Sundance is in January, but we serve, like, this little niche in there, like,
Yeah.
start your year, set the stage for, like, podcasting and creativity
Mhm.
and on-air fest, but what's new this year is that we are adding another space concurrent the whole time in the building next to the hotel. And this space is called XXV. It's a giant gallery that we are bringing in all sorts of workshops and live streaming components and a big stage and the world's first ever ASM bar. It's an ASMR bar where
So
you'll be able to
audio-focused beverage producer. Wow,
you
very
get it.
cool. Yeah.
And other kinds of creative things like that. There'll be, like, exhibitions and artist displays, and it's called the Creator Hall. And, uh, and then we have some evening programming as well. So,
So there's the party aspect too, or the ability to kinda get everybody
yeah.
together and cut loose or relax. The idea of activating the whole hotel, I think that is probably gives you some unique features too that it is, it's especially the industrial nature. It's got
Yeah.
it's quiet enough, you can create the more intimate space because a lot of podcasts will touch on, maybe emotional, kind of stories or things that require kind of a more contemplative, environment. So the hotel sounds like a perfect background for that. I saw you also worked, or did some activations at National Sawdust in Brooklyn too, like,
Yeah.
that space. I've been in there. It's, like, suspended above the
Yeah.
street so it doesn't vibrate and stuff. I mean, it's that's very cool. I think, people must appreciate kind of the care and attention that you're putting into how does let's say I'm a creator and I'm kinda coming in, like, how do you help people, do you work with them to develop the content, or they just kinda bring the story and you ask them what they need? Like, how do you ensure that that's a creator's coming in and gonna have the best experience?
Yeah. Yeah, we like to partner. Everyone that we work with, we think of it as a partnership, whether it's
Mhm,
an independent creator who's doing, like, a live taping or, more of an established, show brand that's doing maybe a big live show in a bigger theater, or a brand sponsor who's coming in and saying, like, "We have these goals, we're trying to participate in the space in this way, how do we do that?" So we always try to really understand, like, what's gonna be beneficial to our partners, what does our audience need and want, and what do we wanna work on? Like, what do we wanna spend our time developing for On Air Fest?
mhm.
And the guiding rubric for me is always, like, um, is it pushing the boundary in some way? It's like, I think On Air Fest exists less to celebrate, like, what folks were doing last year and more to establish what are possibilities for going forward. I want people to, like, come and feel inspired, feel like they thought they knew what podcasting was, but they don't, they have a more expansive idea of what it is. They thought that, audio could only be this, but actually it can be this, and, just try and break the industry and individuals out of any kind of, patterns where we're stuck creatively, so the purpose of the event is for inspiration, for exploring possibilities, celebrating great work, but through the lens of what's next, not through the lens
Mhm.
of, like, looking backwards so much. And I think, like, the the talent know that, like, they're I was on a call, with a couple of bigger name talent, and it was a cool moment for me because they said something like, "Well, it's On Air Fest, we have to bring our A game." And I was like,
Wow,
"Oh,
yeah, there's an
wow."
honor.
Yeah, and I was like, "Okay, so maybe we're not 100,000 people like South by Southwest or 200,000 people. Maybe we are an intimate event in Brooklyn in the winter when it might be snowing and it might be freezing, but it might be magical, and it might be the
Mhm.
kind of thing that really leaves a lasting impression."
I think, that's credit to the kind of curatorial, like you're saying, the aspect of this and the kind of the challenger mindset you want people to bring. So,
Yeah.
if they're going into this and they listen to last year's show, they're like, "Oh, I need to this isn't just another episode for me. This is something special." What are crowd sizes like? I mean, obviously, I think there's, within the hotel, there's some limitations, so tickets must be kind of a hot item. And how can you cater to larger audiences? Do you think, as you continue to grow?
Yeah. It's the real challenge that we have right now because I think what's so special about it is the intimacy. Like, all the spaces that I talked about in the hotel, the main hall, the cinema, the penthouse, the main hall is like you can get like 200 people in there. So, our big stage in the hotel is relatively intimate when you think of the scale of, like, performance
Mhm,
venues.
mhm.
Um, and then all the other spaces are a little bit smaller, but it is that intimacy and it is that special access that I think people like. Last year, the last couple years, it's just been jam packed, and it's more of an issue like between things, like when, the main hall empties out and this thing's starting up there and the elevators. just trying to like, there is a real art in just trafficking people, through the programming. And we're getting better at that every year. But that's partly why we added this creator hall, and
Okay.
it's a 15,000 square foot space. So it's a giant open space that we compartmentalized into different programmatic areas. There are also a number of rooms in the creator hall where we have programming, like breakout programming and activations, one of which is our partnership with KCRW, the LA radio station,
Mhm.
who we rebranded, by the way, and have had a very close relationship with over the
The work
last
by
5 years.
work works with, not just on Airfest. Yeah, I saw that, and it's
Yeah,
just so cool. I mean, and they were so forward. I remember in the early 2000s, they were
yeah,
broadcasting the best music every day, and just saw value in it. They were obviously spending money on it that,
yeah.
other radio stations forego. So what a cool partnership. How does that come alive? How does that activate at the
So
festival?
we're doing a pop-up internet radio station called KCR WWW at On Airfest. There's a dedicated room that is specially designed, and it'll be live streaming and broadcasting all day for 2 days of the public days of the festival. Um, Morning Becomes Eclectic is KCRW's flagship morning music show, hosted by Novena Carmel, and she's coming, and it'll be live from On Air Fest for those 2 days. So we now have like FM radio reach in Los Angeles while we're live doing this festival
That's
in New
not
York.
pirate. That's not
And
pirate
then we have
anymore,
all
sir.
these. Wait, say that again? Yeah.
That's not pirate anymore, sir. I think this is
Yeah. But it's KCRW. So
yeah,
there's like you
is an
know,
indie aspect.
there's an indie aspect, there's a sense of, but this is like pushing boundaries, Also for them, like how innovative is that they're gonna set up a pop-up internet radio station? They have an amazing new music director, a friend of mine named Alejandro Cohen, and he's come on recently and is like trying to bring in some of that internet radio culture into that public radio media culture that sits there, and kudos to him. And On Air Fest, like, it's the place to do that. Like, it's the place for KCRW to have a pirate radio station, as a pop-up.
Mhm.
And that stream, by the way, it'll be 10 hours each day. Will be like, free and open to the public online, through partnership with Mixcloud as well,
Awesome. So anyone can attend the festival, remotely, live as well. Very cool.
for that content.
I'm just curious, obviously you think a lot about media and audiences and we're constantly bombarded and being told the attention spans are dying. If you don't 15-second content or less, is the only thing that works. Obviously, I think you're proving the exception, and hopefully that you're creating a new rule that people are interested in a deeper content. Like, what are some of the kind of conversations that happen around the festival that you're impacted by, or that you kinda like, that prove that this has some worth, and that I mean, obviously the growth shows, but what are kinda some personal touches there too?
Yeah, well, I think podcasting has and radio has proven, that people do,
Yeah.
and also television, like, Severance is a long series, or, Game of Thrones, or, any of these, like, so the idea that like consumers only want short form content on their phones isn't really the full story. I think
Sure.
there's a duality that's happening. There's this like need for doom scroll and like punchy content, candy, all day candy from social media. And then
Mhm.
there's like my long settle in content, in the form of like streaming video and, Netflix shows and HBO and whatnot, and podcasting. And I mean, I try to focus personally, since you asked, on ideas and people and stories, and to just try to not get too caught up in all that. If you're a brand or a person that has a real point of view, or a topic that is like engaging and interesting, I'll listen for an hour. And also I might listen for 10 minutes and also get something out of that. So it's like for me, it's much more about content, like than the format or the form. And I also think that On Air Fest represents the idea that like it can be audio, it can be video, it can be writing, it can be anything that it needs to be to like communicate the idea. We're not like an audio activist organization or something like that. We're championing people who are grabbing the mic physically and metaphorically and telling stories and engaging communities. And I personally, as the director, feel less identified with one particular medium and more identified with the future of storytelling and the future of broadcast and the future of journalism and the future of creativity.
So the near future is On Air Fest 2025. What are you most excited about? What are the highlights that you're expecting or looking forward to for this year?
Like programming
Yeah, programming.
or just, yeah, I'm excited about the lineup. I mean, we have such an amazing lineup. Like you mentioned National Sawdust. We're doing 2 evenings in National Sawdust of live storytelling. My musical hero Daniel Lanois is going to be the guest on Broken Record with Justin Richmond live. Is going to be an amazing evening at National Sawdust, where Daniel's going to talk and also perform. He'll have his pedal steel guitar um, and National Sawdust has 100 plus speaker custom spatial audio system that was like very cutting edge, even just a few years ago. Now it's becoming commonplace for any kind of like theater or experience to have this. So that's going to be amazing. On the thought leadership and, kind of big name side, we have Anderson Cooper's coming to talk about the beautiful show that he created with CNN Audio, about grieving and, identity and family. And, you have someone like him who's like a storied career in news media, and, why is he doing an audio podcast about his process of, you know, um, dealing with his own emotions when his mother passed away, so really beautiful use of the medium in that way. We have Anna
Right.
Martin from Modern Love and Penn Badgley. They're going to talk about modern love and relationships and all the things, that come from that. Seth Meyers and his brother Josh have a really cool show called Family Trips. Last year on Air Fest, Dan Taberski of Missing Richard Simmons and Hysterical and all these other amazing, well-recognized shows profiled them. Why does like a late night comedian who's has a storied career on television, why does he need an audio podcast? And it was an amazing session, so many laughs, a few tears in the crowd, because it's very personal storytelling that they're doing. And this year, all 3 of them are coming back because Dan's work with Wondery and Pineapple Street Studios on the show Hysterical got the recognition of Apple Podcast #1 show of the year. And Seth and Josh said, let's flip the script and have Dan on as our guest. So it's
Wow.
also like something I'm really proud of is that people want to come back year after year and participate, even bigger name people who like don't need the platform. And
Yeah.
then we have a whole bunch of like younger and emerging artists, creators, experimenters, who are going to be like on site with exhibitions and, live tapings. We have Kareem Rama from Subway Takes. We're gonna profile him and his creative process. Taylor Lorenz is gonna be on site talking about, the disruption in media and what it means to be an independent, new media creator and a journalist today, and
Amazing.
more.
You're packed. I guess, just while I've got you for another second, because you're so thoughtful about, representation and, use of media and use of venue and everything. The one thing we've talked about, we're kind of danced around because we talked about all these other ways, but events, what, and that's the format of this show. Like, obviously, you chose this could be all
Yeah,
online. In some ways, you could have a studio and record it and release it.
yeah.
Why? There's a lot of trouble you go to. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into it. What do you think the power of events is in terms of, what lessons has your festival taught you about what an event can do, how it builds community, how it reflects culture? What have been some of the lessons there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, coming together is amazing, it feels so good. It feels so good if you're working on an event when everyone comes and has a great time, and it feels so good, to be at an event that you're having an amazing time at. It is funny because during the pandemic, I think we all thought this. I certainly thought that, well, that's over. We
Yeah.
did 3 years of On Air Fest, super cool, had a great time. And, and then we did an online version that year, and we got amazing bookings. We had Francis Ford Coppola talk about his work on, Apocalypse Now and The Godfather, and we had, just like Yo-Yo Ma in his living room with his cello, he performed. I mean, the sort of programming was, like, almost unachievable if it were in person,
Mhm, mhm.
but it was, like,
Wasn't the same.
not as fun. I
Huh.
don't think the audience was as engaged. I don't think there were those I've transcended myself for a moment, or I met someone
Mm.
new, or so, like, the power of, like, in person and live events, and I really believe in it. We say sometimes, like, at least in audio podcasting, a lot of it is spent listening alone. But here at On Airfest, we listen together, and we turn it into a party, we turn it into conference, we turn it into festival, we turn it into, like, experiential. And, I believe in that. It's very expensive to put on events. It's a whole lot of work. Um, and it is worth it, you know? I think it is worth it.
That's great, and you're proving it. I mean, the benefits that the creators and the audience are both getting is amazing. I think there's a lot of creators that are kinda working alone there too, and they
Yes.
say, if you could imagine the numbers that you're seeing of the listeners of a podcast sitting in that room, if you ever get down on yourself about a bad episode or what, imagine even 20 people sitting in front of you listening to you
Yeah.
talk. I mean, is so impactful, and you're giving them the chance to really feel it, and providing a respect for the craft and also pushing it. I mean, I think what you're doing, is good for podcasting, but I think also good for events. I think the style is something that is important. I think, obviously there's maybe humanities events or maybe a little bit more austere talks and things like that. But I think
Yes.
you're doing the same thing, but on a very like approachable, poppy, like catchy feel. The branding's amazing. Like, so I just think people must be pulled in. I looking forward to, going to the stadium and listening to a podcast, I think in a couple of years, as you guys keep growing. I'm glad to see the popularity, and, that's been my interest in podcasting is just the ability to connect with people through an audio medium. So, thank you so much for joining today. I appreciate it, and keep up the good work. Look forward to watching this year, listening and watching, what comes out of this year's festival.
Amazing. I had the best time talking with you.
That's a wrap on another episode of Event Explorer. A huge thank you to Scott Newman for sharing his insights and giving us a behind-the-scenes look at On Air Fest, an event that's redefining what a festival for sound and storytelling can be. Scott and his team at Work by Work are creating something truly special, blending technology, performance, and storytelling into an experience that keeps evolving every year. If you're a fan of podcasts, live storytelling, or just being in the room where the next big thing is happening, On Air Fest 2025 is the place to be, February 19th through the 21st in Brooklyn. You can check out the full lineup and grab your tickets at onairfest.com. Before you go, make sure to follow Event Explorer, share this episode with a friend, and leave us a review. It helps us bring more incredible event stories and guests to you. All right, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Until then, happy exploring.